And joining us now to discuss the latest out of Venezuela, we have Associate Professor at NYU, Alejandro Velasco. Professor Velasco, thanks for being with us today. So what is your take on these recent events in Venezuela? How would you summarize it?
I mean, it's a struggle for power, obviously. On the one hand, of course, you have now very emboldened opposition with the coordinated support of major international powers in the Western Hemisphere. And on the other hand, you have Nicolás Maduro with a different array of constellation of powers aligned behind him. Both, of course, are claiming legitimacy of rule based on questions of constitutional constitutionality. But the real question is actually who holds power in Venezuela, and to what extent can their international allies abroad bring about a rapid resolution to the stalemate.
And now, given that you are a professor in modern Latin American studies, can you give us your thoughts on the history of U.S. involvement in Latin America and their politics specifically? And how has the U.S. shaped the crisis that we're now seeing today?
Yeah, certainly. The U.S. has a long and sordid history of intervention, overt and covert, in Latin America, going back to, the middle of the 19th century. But you don't have to go that far back also to see the U.S. asserting its power to try to shape events in Latin America. In 2009, for instance, it helped to orchestrate a coup against democratically elected President Manuel Zelaya in Honduras, then later on in Paraguay as well. And so the U.S. efforts to undermine democratically elected governments, especially when they don't meet its desires and interests, is long and well documented. In the case of Venezuela, it's a little bit more complicated because Venezuela, of course, is a larger nation. It's more powerful. It also has exerted a significant amount of independence, certainly under Hugo Chavez and later on under Maduro. And so here, the struggle is in part all the more dramatic as it's being staged right now.
And Nicolás Maduro, as you said, he was twice democratically elected to the office of president of Venezuela. But still, many people argue that the elections were illegitimate. And that's supposed to be the crux of the problem today. Yet nobody has really provided much evidence or proof that Maduro is illegitimate. A lot of accusations. Today, Maduro says he's willing to talk with opposition and international mediators as well. Is this a fair next step? Is this a fair thing for him to ask?
Well, I mean, there are certainly important questions to be raised as to the legitimacy of the elections that were held last year that brought Nicolás Maduro a new 6-year term of office. Several of the leading opposition candidates were barred from running. Several of them were also abroad in exile. And so there are important questions to be asked about the legitimacy, but the question isn't about constitutionality. The question really is about legitimacy and who exercises power. That's where intervention on the part of external powers is so dangerous. In terms of his calls for negotiation, yes, certainly that's exactly what is needed in Venezuela, because right now what we're otherwise seeing is an escalating conflict with little signs of abating that could eventually lead to the outcome that very few people want, which is, in fact, open violence.
And lastly, the West has implemented new sanctions on state oil. They've given Juan Guaido control over some assets within the U.S. banking system, at least. This is clearly aimed at disabling and paralyzing Maduro. Is the U.S. intention here legitimate, or do you believe there are other motives involved?
I mean, certainly to try to circumvent the cash flow of Venezuela directly contradicts one of the major stated aims of supporting the opposition, which is, of course, to alleviate a deep economic crisis affecting Venezuela. And so to the extent that these measures that have been recently undertaken further hamstring and deepen the suffering of Venezuelans on the ground, they seem to stand in a little bit of a contradiction to claims about humanitarian concerns, etc. So yes, certainly that is a problem, that is an issue to be raised. I also think that it's people like Elliot Abrams who've been appointed as special envoy with a tremendously sordid past of intervening in Latin America raise serious doubts as to the legitimate intent of the United States in Venezuela.
All right, we'll have to leave it right there. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today. Alejandro Velasco.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.